So I know I've told this story before, and there's a couple of reasons why I want to retell it. One, that's too long. I understand that. The videos I've been making have been too long, and it's out of laziness on my part that I only have so much time to play with the car, make the video, edit it, get it up, write about it, create a website. So what I'm hoping is that I get the website done, and then I can start making just 20-minute episodes, start improving the production value of the videos, and make it so that my goal would be if I eventually make enough money, I could hire somebody to just edit the videos for me and make them. I don't want to add music and a bunch of fluff and all that crap. To me, that's a waste of time. But I do want to. I want to shorten them, make them more intelligent, release them on a regular basis, and not just put a 2-hour sort of barely edited video up. So I'm working on that. So I need to redo this one. The other reason is I think I was a little bit too crass. I know I was. One of the things that I've told myself is that when I do this, I'm going to be honest, and sometimes it's going to turn some people off. But I do want to sort of explain. I do think it's important that I tell my story of what I do for a living. I just can't be so specific. As you might imagine, I got in a little trouble for being a little bit too specific. But I am going to tell you the story. If you've already watched this, you may want to just skip this video because I've already told this story before. So in some of the other episodes, I explained to you, how I learned how to sell and some of the, how that I'm an engineer type, and the logical question is, well, you're in financial services. How the heck does that happen? And I still look back and say, I don't know. It's divine intervention, I guess. So I have told you the story. I've told you about me being in selling home theater, and when I graduated college, I was, I wasn't an expert salesman, but I knew how to sell. So I went to Villanova, and all my buddies were going to work for Lockheed Martin or Unisys, or go be an AutoCAD draftsman, or do something in engineering, and sort of start in an entry-level engineering position. Some would try to go and get their professional engineer designation, or whatever you call that license, PE license. And sort of we all headed out on our own path, some in Philadelphia, some where they were from, and others moved away. So when I was in college, and I told this story before, my sophomore year I flunked a class and I had to get a job, and I got a job at selling home theater, and then I learned how to sell. So fast forward a bit, I'm in Orlando, and I'm hacked off at the company I'm working for, Sound Advice, because I was essentially accused of stealing. Okay, if you guys get to know me, or you've gotten to know me from watching these videos, I take my cart back at Walmart, and I don't go to Walmart, but let's say if I go to Publix, the grocery store, I take my cart back where it belongs. I don't leave it next to my car. Even though I park my car way out in the middle of nowhere, I take my cart back. I pick up trash when I see it on the ground. I don't throw stuff out the window. I do what's right. I'm not going to steal something, especially at a place that I love. And I loved home theater. I love selling it. I love being there. I love being a part of it. And so one day I walk into my regular scheduled time into my store in Orlando, where I was number 1 or 2, depending on what month it was. And so I'd sold a lot of stuff, and I'm like, they called me into the office, and the guy that was there is actually funny. He's a Porsche guy. I don't know how he could afford to own Porsches, because he had a brand new 997.1 at the time. But so he and I always hit it off pretty well. But he was the shrink guy. He was the compliance guy, the guy that would go and catch thieves and try to make sure that the stores were not losing money due to shrink and theft and things like that. So the main store manager wasn't there, but the assistant and the sales manager, and then, or no, the assistant manager, we had a controller, a guy who was in charge of shrink at the branch. I forget what we called him because we were a really big store. And then this guy who was the head of shrink for the whole company. And they called me and said, Matt, we need to talk to you. We've been waiting for you. I said, well, okay. So in there, chuckling it up, shooting the breeze. Hey, how's it going? I said, and the guy hands me a receipt. He says, what do you know about this? I'm looking at it. This is from like 2.5 years prior, up in Philadelphia. And I'll spare you the details, but essentially it had something to do with me. It was a buddy of mine, and we did his Audi TT. And I had remembered that what I had a standing offer with all my friends that everybody got 20 up, which was fine. I mean, that was the rule, that friends and family get 20 up, you get 10 up above cost as an employee. So you wanted to buy a home theater receiver or a TV or something, you get 10% above cost. So friends, and I made a decent amount of friends that were buying stuff, especially as we were all getting graduating. He was a couple of years older than me and was a mortgage broker at the time, which obviously he was doing well in 2002, 2003. So he wasn't hurt for money. He wasn't asking for a deal. I was just giving him, designed the system for him, and we did it. And I had remembered, and it took me a while, and they thought that I was lying because I'm trying to remember 2.5 years ago, and I'd sold millions of dollars worth of stuff. And so I had to sort of explain, and of course I'm fumbling. The guy's basically saying, you're going to jail if you can't explain this, and I'm a little taken back, and so they think they've caught me, and they got like the heat light on me basically, and they think they've caught me in some sort of lie or something, and I'm like, stuttering and stammering. I'm like, let me think about this. So I eventually figured out after making some calls with some friends, and because they gave me some time to figure it out, and as they're interrogating me back and forth, and I'd remembered that what happened is I backed the deal out at 20 up and put it in at 10 up, and I remember why. It's because the installers were yelling at me because I didn't charge enough labor. You're always quoting labor on a job, but you don't know exactly how long it's going to take, and I know the installers are giving me a hard time, so I just ate the profit, which is what I got paid on, and did it at 10 up and backed the stuff out, and they basically were saying that I backed all this stuff out, but it was there was stuff in the car, and that I gave it to my friend, and he was a loose acquaintance. And I said, that's ridiculous. So, long story short, it came down to like $70 worth of cables, which they made me pay for. But again, if you know anything about me, my character is all I got, and I just felt wronged. I just felt like it was like deflating a balloon, and it's almost like I took the sunglasses off and I could see my life now. It's like everything that was black and white before, now I was seeing in color. And I looked around, and it just, not to say that the guys I'm working with are great guys, and a lot of them were doing really well. And shoot, I was making almost 6 figures at 22, 23 years old. And it's just that they hadn't gone to Villanova. They didn't have an engineering degree. They didn't do what I did in high school and college and put in the effort that I did. And it was little effort as I did put into studying, but I did it. I made it through, and I graduated, and I have a degree, and I got that diploma on my wall. And you don't need that to be selling home theater. And I realized that I need to grow up. I need to get a real job. Problem is I don't know what to do. How are you going to go from making 6 figures to 30 grand as an entry-level engineer, or 40 grand? That's a hard thing to do. At least it was for me. I'm sure it would be for anybody. You get accustomed to a certain lifestyle. So it was I don't know exactly when, but it was a little while after that. I was in my store, and I was always running. I was always I did a lot of custom home theater stuff. I didn't do as much retail selling anymore. I had a partner. He did all the retail selling. I did all the sort of the custom stuff, crawling around in attics and just telling people where they can put distributed audio and doing dedicated home theaters and stuff like that. So I was doing and then it was really sort of designing, complicated systems. So I was using my engineering expertise on how to solve problems, and I was really good at explaining this complicated stuff and sort of convincing people that they needed the next step up, or needed needed a specific cable or a specific part that they didn't realize that they needed, and sort of help them think through what that was going to cost. So I was, this day I remember it vividly, and then I was sort of walking around, and I was gathering up a bunch of cables, and I saw there's what would happen often, and this happens in any retail environment, there's a lot of downtime. So there was a bunch of guys over there standing by the front door, sort of hanging out by the proverbial water cooler, just hanging out by the computer. And I saw this old guy walked in, an older gentleman walk in. He's in his mid 50s, mid to late 50s. And he was looking at, he's standing there looking at a TV. And I know what happened is the guy said, "Look, can I help you?" And he said, No, I'm just looking." So I would never do that, or try not to do that, unless I really didn't want to help somebody, just to make sure that they if they looked me in the eye and I didn't want to help them, I'd say, "Can I help you?" And then obviously they'd always say, No, I'm just looking. But in this case, I said, I put the cables down, put all the receipts, all the stuff down I was messing with, and I just walked up and I said, "Look, man," or just engage him into a conversation. I don't know exactly what I said, but he was looking at a Pioneer Elite plasma, and I just started sort of talking to him about the plasma, and then I started asking him questions. What's your room like? How far back are you going to sit? What are you trying to accomplish with the TV? How often are you going to watch it? Are you going to be playing video games on it? Just trying to get a feel for what he was attempting to use the TV for. And I could see that, the guy's sitting there, he's just eating this up. And just taking him through the process, walking around the store, talking about this, that, and the other. And by the end of it, he said, "You'd be great at doing what I do." And I said, "Well, what's that?" And he says, "Well, I'm a financial planner. I'm in the business of providing financial advice, and it's very similar to what you're doing." I'm like, "What? How is providing financial advice similar to what selling TVs?" And so I took his card, and he said, "I'll be back. I need to think about this. I need to do a little more research," because he's like me, likes to do research before he makes a decision. Almost, he does more research than I do, or he chews on it a lot more than I do. I probably do more research, but then I make a decision. He likes to think it through, so we differ there a little bit. But what happened was he eventually came back, and he just kept probing me. He said, "Look, man, I'm telling you, you'd be good at doing what I do. I'd like you to hear me out." And I just kept sort of shrugging it off. And at the end of he bought a TV and a receiver and a few things, nothing crazy, a few $1,000s worth of stuff. And so we had like a 24-month, same as cash, interest-free financing or something crazy like that going on. And I said, "Look, I don't get anything out of this, but would you like to take advantage? It just takes 5 minutes, and we fill out a credit app, and you can defer payments." He said, "Well, being a finance guy, sure, that's free money, and I'll certainly take you up on that offer." So on that credit application, we fill it all out, and in the right-hand corner, bottom right-hand corner, it said, which I was always interested in what people wrote in, and just to sort of, it was always fascinating to me. I always tried not to profile, but it fascinated me what some people made and what some people didn't. And so you'd have to write on the corner, what do you make? What's your income? And so we wrote on there. And in that box, it was an open box, and it could be either annual or monthly. And there was no check box, it was just either or. And I had to ask him, I said, "Is that annually or is that monthly?" And he said, no, that's monthly. So I said, "Give me your card again," and I called him. So this process, or this idea of becoming a financial advisor was, I didn't know really much about what I was going to make, or I just knew how much he was making, or had a reasonable idea. And I knew that this guy, was something about him was just right. I just knew that what he was telling me was not, was true. You could tell this guy is legit. And so I started talking to him, and he's one of these people that, his name's Jim Heaton. He's one of these people who just, if he finds the right person, he's inspiring. I mean, he's my mentor, and he's sort of taught me not just about financial advising and money, but just about life. And so everybody needs a mentor in their life, and certainly I have my dad and my mom, but I think people need a mentor that is maybe even a little bit older than your parents, or in a different stage that has similar interests. So Jim said, look, you need to come to an interview. And I'm like, okay, and I didn't have a suit, but I did wear a tie at Sound Advice, and so I went up, and I actually borrowed my buddy's suit. It just didn't fit. It was the most hideous thing ever. It's like a 4-button, I don't even know, it was horrible. And I didn't care about clothes. I still don't care about clothes, but I do know that I have to dress, somewhat well in order to make sure that people take me seriously. So I went up there and interviewed, and I think I did great. I was never scared. I was always sort of confident, but hopefully not pompous. I knew what I wanted, and I'd done research, and now I wanted this. And at this point, I didn't even care how much money I was going to make. I just knew that I want to do what he's doing, and I know I can get there. And so the interview process went great, and then I'd come back and interview again, and then they sent me down to Orlando to interview. Now, remember, I'm 23 years old, 22 and a half, 23 years old, and I go down to Orlando, and I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but they just kept saying, we want you to interview with one more person. And I think what it was is they saw something in me, but also saw that I looked like a freaking goofball, I look. They said, and they still tell me this to this day, that I look like Opie Taylor. Naturally, I had to look up who the heck is Opie Taylor. And now I know that's Ron Howard, right? Ron Howard is a pretty successful dude, so I always tell them that. I said, you should have known better that Opie Taylor started out as a kid on the Andy Griffith Show, but now look at him. He's a multimillionaire. So massively successful. So I went through maybe about 9 interviews, and then they finally said, look, we're not really hiring at this time, but keep in touch. So I think I was maybe just turned 23. And so throughout this process, by the end of the interview process, I was about 23 and a half or so. So throughout this whole process, I'm thinking, okay, after every interview, it goes great. We have a great conversation, great rapport. And they say, okay, we'll get back to you, and then nothing. And then, okay, one more interview. Okay, and one more interview. And every time, Jim's like, look, I think you got it. I think you got it. I think you got it. I'm pushing. Because Jim really pushed for me. And so I got denied. It's not that he said no, he just said, not right now. And so fast forward another roughly year after 3 or 4 more interviews. So I had to go through 12 interviews in order to finally get the job. And then they tell me what the salary is, and it's like 40% of what I'm making. And I'm about to get married, and we're about to buy a house, but something about it just told me, look, you got to do this. Once I committed, again, it's all or nothing with me. I'm in. This is the deal. I'm going to be a financial advisor. That's what I'm going to do. So I get there, and you got to study. Now remember, I have a problem with studying. The thing I realized is that I had a problem with studying if there's no real sort of money behind it, there's no motivation. When I started studying for my Series 7, I realized, man, this stuff is easy. Like compared to engineering, everybody talks about how hard the Series 7 is, but compared to engineering, where you show up at class, you have no idea what they're talking about. You go read the book, have no idea what they're saying. You go get your homework, you can't solve any of the problems, and you go meet with a professor, or in my case, you copy it from the next guy, and you learn how to solve problems by trial and error and sort of figuring it out. Whereas with business, you read it, and that's the answer. I mean, there's no imaginary variables or anything. So to me, I'm like, this is great. And oh, by the way, it's super interesting to me. So there was this sort of natural ability, or this natural desire I want to learn everything about the 1940 Act, or I want to learn everything about whatever. I want to learn everything there is to know about this stuff. But I knew that I didn't have to study 10 hours a day like many did. It's not that I'm super smart, it's just that I'm good at learning stuff like that. And this is the first time I'm really studying in my life, so I know there's no way I'm going to fail this test. Because if you fail, you're out. You know, that you have to, you know, you're going to do something else in your life. Responsible with my own money. I was always buying cool stuff. I never got into debt, never reached too far, never had any issues with that. But I did live it up. You know, I was making a bunch of money as a young, you know, somewhat successful guy, and I was into cars and home theater and expensive stuff. So I know that I don't know much about money. I know that I don't know much about life. I know that I can, usually if I can get in front of someone, as long as I know what I'm talking about, I can do okay. You know, I can sell, if you will. And Jim has just kept sort of beating this into my brain that you're not selling anything. What you're doing is you're selling your advice. You're selling you. You're selling a person on your intelligence, your expertise, and what that you know what you're talking about, and that you're an expert in a topic that maybe they're not, and they'll be willing to pay you for that advice. And so I felt like, you know, being the engineer type, being the type C guy, I can't sell anything unless I know it inside and out. And I knew that I still don't know everything, and I probably never will, but I knew that this was going to be a long process, but I needed to speed it up if I was going to make it, if I was going to be successful, if I was going to be able to convince anybody to let me sort of provide them advice on their life savings, I needed to learn everything I could learn. And so while I'm studying Series 7, I ended up getting an 85 on the Series 7, so some of the guys in the office have done much better, so they always make fun of me, saying that they're way smarter. But my argument is that I wasn't focused solely on the Series 7. I knew I wasn't going to pass. I wasn't going to fail that. I needed to. You wasted your time. I needed to learn more stuff. So while I studied my Series 7, I started working on a designation, a certified financial manager, something like that, some designation, and I wanted to have some letters behind my name up so that when I got my business cards and I'd made my pitch book for people that it made sense. That I had some credentials because I look like I'm 15. Now I look like an old, you know, I look like a seasoned vet, if you will, but at the time I looked like I was 15. So my goal was to become a certified financial planner, to have my Series 7 done, Series 66 done, have my life health variable annuity license, because you have to have that, and have that all done, have it all knocked out, have it all taken care of. And so that way, the day one when I hit, you know, when the clock starts ticking, if you will, because you only have a certain amount of time to make it, then you know, I wanted to be ready to go. I wanted to have my business plan done. I wanted to know who was going to call, what was I going to say to them, how was I going to say it, and what was I going to send to them, and then if they did come in, what the heck was I going to do? And so while this sort of 4-month process is going on, luckily Jim had started to sort of work towards sort of semi-retirement, or wasn't working as hard as he used to. He had taken on a partner who's now my partner today. And so I was able to go to Jim, and he didn't have this sort of formalized, but I took everything out of his brain. Jim sort of gave me one of the sort of the comments that I hold on to near and dear. Is that part of the reason why I made it is that I was one of the more teachable people that he had ever encountered, or maybe most teachable people. And you know, I started to think about that and really sort of take that to heart, that I think if you want to be good at anything, I think you need to be teachable. You need to be humble and teachable, and you need to stand up when you think something's right, but you need to be teachable. So as Jim sort of spit this information out, I took it all in, and I would go and I actually sort of formalized it and created sort of a system and a program that I've taught many other people. By the way, you know, out of all the people I've taught, 2 have actually done it and made it out of 50, 30, something like that. And even the ones that make it usually have some, just like I do, some lucky story. But basically what I had to do was cold call. And I know it was horrible. And when they're telling you, how you're going to do this, you're going to cold call people when you're interviewing, you're like, yeah, I can do that, no problem. But for a non-outgoing, sort of rather shy person, oh my gosh, it was horrible. Like horrible beyond belief. But the beauty of it is I already knew what I was going to say, how I was going to say it. All I had to do was read it. And all I had to do was make the dials. And my goal was to make 400 dials a day. I probably ended up making about 200 on average, because some days I just show up and say, I'm just not doing it. Or, as we were getting ready to get married, I slacked off, and Steve had to call me in the office and say, look, man, you need to step it up. And to be honest with you, I graduated the program by the skin of my teeth, like last second. You had to have a certain amount of clients and a certain amount of, because what happens is you were paid a salary and then the salary goes away. It's pretty standard in the industry. So this whole sort of process of going through this, and now I'm 11 years in, and obviously I've had some success. I'm not making zillions of dollars, but I make more than the average. And yes, I make a living off of providing a service. I provide clients with advice to hopefully help them not make a poor decision or two in their life, to help them sort of be financially successful. And I understand that's not for everybody, and I understand some people feel like maybe I'm screwing people or making money off of other people, but I have a specific expertise because I've spent more time, more effort, put in the hours, put in put in the brain power to become an expert in a specific topic and get tons of designations and make sure that I know what I'm talking about. Because again, I'm not a particularly gifted salesperson. I just happen to be, again, decent at sort of conveying or explaining a complex topic. So my sort of story of, holy crap, I'm a financial advisor, I still have to pinch myself. I don't take any of this for granted. Especially after going through my crazy episode when when I was having sort of anxiety attacks. I thank my lucky stars every day. I thank God for the luck of meeting Jim and finding a mentor, for the intestinal fortitude to get on the phone, to call, to find people, for those people to trust me and to hire me, and so it could all go away tomorrow. And so I would hope that people would always sort of gravitate toward me as a specific personality. Like I've got 8 computer screens in my office and diplomas all over the place, and organized, of course, and everything's level, as you might imagine. But I hope you don't take this the wrong way, that I'm some financial advisor jerk that screwing people out of their money and taking it out of their pocket and put it into mine. That's not the case. I charge people a modest fee for my advice, and hopefully they deem that worthy. So my story hopefully doesn't end here, but I think that I needed to tell this. I think I need to tell you what I do for a living, simply because, one, you're wondering how the heck did I afford a GT3, and then secondly, it's a big part of me. It's a big part of who I am. It's a big part of who I've become. It's a big part of who I will be. It's a big part of my family's life. I mean, I spend 60% of my time, my waking hours, at the office, and despite what it looks like I'm in the garage all the time, I'm there first and foremost. That's what my expertise is. Detailing is my hobby, but my passion and what makes me tick is being an expert and providing financial advice. And I hope that I'll be able to do this forever. I think I probably will, and I hope that me telling this story makes sense. So that's my story of how I went from selling home theater to now sort of building a business and providing a service to people that really need it. So Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy the website and the YouTube channel. And I promise once I get these done, I'll get back to just detailing and lowering cars and talking about performance parts and things like that.